This section is 6.4 factoring trinomials. We did a lot of this before we went on spring break, but I wanted to do a few more examples to remind you of how we actually go about factoring these. So the first thing we always did is multiply our first number times our last number in our trinomial. Well, if we don't have a number in front, remember we can put a 1 right there. And so we're going to actually multiply that 1 times 5. And so I'm going to multiply these two. I already need a new marker. So let's switch back to purple. So I'm going to multiply the 1 times the 5. Okay, you don't have to write that part out. I'm just doing that for sake of our notes here. So 1 times 5 is 5. And our middle number we put down here. Okay, now to factor, we solved this diamond problem. So we have to remember what two numbers multiply to 5 but add up to -6. And so that's where the multiplication chart will come in handy. Well, we can do -1 times -5. That multiplies to +5, and then -1 plus -5 adds up to -6. Now, why do we even do all of this? Because we can't factor if it has 3 terms. We need it to have 4 terms. So what we do is we break apart that middle term with these two numbers we've just come up with. So I'm going to rewrite this problem first with the 1x squared, and then I'm going to go in the order I wrote down my numbers. Minus 1x minus 5x. That's how I get the -6, and then bring down the +5. What I can do with 4 terms is factoring by grouping, which we've been doing for quite a while. So in my first group, I'm thinking of the biggest number that goes into 1 and 1, which is obviously 1. And then I look at which variable is the smallest for me to take out. Well, that's going to be just regular x. So that's what I divide both of these by. 1 divided by 1 is 1. X squared divided by x means we're going to really subtract those exponents. 2 take away 1 leaves you with just 1. You could put it there or you don't even have to. Bring down the minus sign. 1 divided by 1 is 1, and x divided by x cancels out. Now for group 2, first thing you have to remember is whatever symbol is in the middle, we need to bring that down. And then we're looking at the biggest number that goes into 5 and 5, which is obviously 5 here. Now I can't ever take out a variable from group 2 because this one doesn't have one. So I'm only focusing on the number. Well, because I have a minus sign in front, I'm going to divide that by -5. So -5 divided by -5 is +1, and that x comes down. 5 divided by -5 is -1. Remember, we did our job right if these two things match. So to write our final answer, we write 1x minus 1, the stuff we had in our parentheses, then our leftover stuff gets together. 1x from right here, and minus 5. So these two parentheses together give me the final factored form for this trinomial. So let's go to example 2. Same kind of situation. I need to put a 1 in front of that n squared, and I'm going to multiply both of those. So 1 times -4 is -4, and our middle number is +3 this time. So we do have to do a little bit of thinking. If I use 2 and 2, there's no way I can get that to multiply to -4 and add up to 3. But I can use 4 and -1. 4 times -1 is -4. 4 plus -1 gives me that +3 that I want. So I'm now going to break up that middle term with those two numbers. So I write 1n squared, and then plus 4n, then minus 1n, and finally minus 4. Now that we have 4 terms, we're going to do grouping again. In group 1, the biggest number that goes into 1 and 4 is 1, and we know we can only take out an n. So that's what we divide by. 1 divided by 1 is 1, and n squared divided by n is n. Works the same way over here with the x. 4 divided by 1 is 4, and the n's cancel out. Once again, we have that minus sign we need to bring down. And then in group 2, we have the biggest number that goes into 1 and 4. That's just 1. But that minus sign means we're going to divide by -1. So -1 divided by -1 is +1. The n comes down. -4 divided by -1 is +4. We got our parentheses to match, so we know we did that right. So I'm going to write that down first, and then our leftover information is 1n and -1. And we're going to get to some examples where the problems may be a little bit bigger. So in example 3, I'm going to do 5 times 12. That's 60. And our middle number is negative 23. So we might have to do a little bit of thinking to figure out what two numbers multiply to 60 but add up to negative 23. Well, I know 20 times 3 is 60, but if I need them to add up to negative 23, let's make them both negative. Now let's do our grouping. 5x squared minus 20x minus 3x plus 12. Well, in group 1, the biggest number that goes into 5 and 20 is 5. And we know we can take out an x. So 5 divided by 5 is 1. X squared divided by x is x. 20 divided by 5 is 4. And remember, those variables are always canceling out right there. All right, we've got another problem with that minus sign. I picked a lot of these so we could continue practicing with that. And then in group 2, I have the biggest number that goes into 3 and 12, which is 3. So that minus sign really means we're dividing by negative 3. So negative 3 divided by negative 3 is positive 1. That x comes down. 12 divided by negative 3 is negative 4. So to write out our final answer, I write 1x minus 4 and then 5x minus 3. Okay, one last one that's kind of like this. We're dealing with 2 and 18. So 2 times 18 is 36, and our middle number is negative 15. So we've got a lot of options for what two numbers multiply to 36. The only thing that's going to work for us is if we use negative 3 and negative 12. So let me come down here and write that problem out. 2m squared minus 3m minus 12m plus 18. Remember, I got these two numbers from us completing the diamond problem. So in group 1, the biggest number that goes into 2 and 3 is 1, but we know we can take out the m. 2 divided by 1 is 2. M squared divided by m is m. 3 divided by 1 is 3, and those m's cancel out. Got another minus in this problem. Okay, now I've got some bigger numbers to think about. In group 2, I need to find the biggest number that goes into 12 and 18. That's going to be 6 here. So we will divide both of these by negative 6. Negative 12 divided by negative 6 is positive 2, and that m comes down. 18 divided by negative 6 is negative 3. They both match. We did this right. So I have 2m minus 3 in the first set of parentheses and 1m minus 6 in the second set. So there's a little bit of review of factoring trinomials.